Trig Review Test 2, problem number 12. We're working on problems 12 through 17 now. Graph y equals 2 sine of x minus pi over 2. Use your knowledge of the different information we've learned about the graphs of trig functions and your graphing calculator. I don't really think you'll have any problems to choosing the correct multiple choice answer when you think about what you know. You know amplitude's 2, you know phase shift is pi over 2, you know the period is 2 pi. If you will set your calculator to radians and zoom trig and put this function in your calculator, you should be able to match this up with just that much information. If you can't match the graph to the correct multiple choice answer, set your window settings to the graph's window settings given on the test. It probably would also be helpful to think about where this sine function graph starts and where it ends. Since there is a phase shift of pi over 2, this sine graph starts at pi over 2 and will have completed its period at pi over 2 plus 2 pi, which is 5 pi over 2. So it's going to look like this. Amplitude is 2. We're starting this sine curve at pi over 2. It will continue on until 5 pi over 2. It will continue on in both directions, but at this point 5 over 2, you should see one complete period of pi. I think with that much information, you should be able to choose the correct graph. And you know that this goes on in both directions. So when you're looking at your calculator, you're seeing all of this going both ways. So let's put this in the calculator and see what it looks like. Y equals 2 sine of x minus pi over 2. Graph. I see this graph. If I wanted to, I could trace, and I could say, hey, let me see where this starts. This starts at 1.57. 1.57 is pi divided by 2. Let's see where this thing ends. It ends over here at 7.94. Is 5 times 3.14 divided by 2 equal to 7.94? If it is, then I'm pretty happy. 5 times 3.14 equals, divided by 2 equals 7.85. That's close enough. Yes. I don't think you will need all this information to do these graphs. I think by just looking at the graph and this, you'll be able to choose the right answer. I gave you some extra information in case you had problems. Maybe it would help you. Number 13, find the amplitude of y equals 5/4 sine of negative 4 pi over 3x. Well, we know, hey, all we got to do is look at that number at the beginning of this thing in front of sine. Amplitude 5/4. 14. Find the period of y equals 5 cosine of 8 pi over x plus 4 pi. Period equals 2 pi divided by b. There's b. It's whatever's in front of that x. So this is 2 pi divided by 8 pi. The period equals 1 over 4. Number 15. Determine the phase shift. Y equals -5 times the cosine of 8x plus pi. You know that to determine phase shift, you set what's in parentheses equal to 0 and solve for x. 8x equals -pi. Divide both sides by 8. X equals -pi over 8. That means this is going to the left. Number 16. Determine the phase shift of y equals 2 times the cosine of -3x plus pi over 3. -3x plus pi over 3 equals 0. -3x equals -pi over 3. Divide both sides by -3 is the same thing as multiplying by -1/3. You have pi over 9. It's positive, so this is to the right. One more of these graphs. Number 17. Graph y equals 2 cosine of 3x. Amplitude 2, period 2 pi divided by 3. Be sure that you have your calculator set in radians. Graph this, check the multiple choice answers, see if it matches up. If you have any trouble, set your scale on your calculator. The same as that of the multiple choice answers. And compare. When we graph this, we have y equals, I've already set my calculator to radians. I've already done that second trig to set my window. Already done zoom trig to set my window, excuse me. Now let's clear out anything that's in our calculator. Graph this 2 cosine 3x this is the cosine function, Amplitude is 2. It tells me it starts right here. The period is 2 pi over 3. That tells me that it is going to complete one period at 2 pi over 3. So if I'm looking at this, there was no phase shift. This has got to be 2 pi over 3. That is 2 times 3.14 divided by 3. That equals 2.09. You could do trace. That is 2.09. I'm going to look at my multiple choice answers and see if I see one of those graphs that looks like it has completed one period at 2.09.